Seems like we're on time. So just wanted to say hello to everybody. And thank you for joining us today to learn more about how to measure and communicate about your family engagement impact. I see we have some folks here who are longtime Ready4K partners. Hello. And others who are brand new to the program. And some of you might be thinking about bringing our Ready4K and Parent-Powered programs to your organization. And as we dive into measuring and reporting on our family engagement impact, I think there's a lot for us to learn, including me. So I hope you'll chime in through the chat to share your own strategies and experiences. And we'll also have time at the end for a Q&A session where we can dive deeper to what's on your minds. I quickly wanted to introduce myself. My name is Hii Sheikh, and I'm the Program Success Manager at ParentPowered, the creators of Ready4K. And I've been lucky to work alongside so many of you who've joined us today. I joined ParentPowered 4 years ago after working as the Data and Technology Coordinator for the Pre-K for All program for the New York City Department of Education, where I created a data-driven strategy for driving school enrollments among non-English speaking families. Prior to that, I studied education policy at Harvard, where I also had the opportunity to develop an observational measure for regulation-related skills in early childhood classroom settings. And through my experiences, I have learned how powerful data-driven decisions can be, and I'm really excited to be in a position to support you all with your data needs. And I am joined by my colleague Maya, and I'll let her introduce herself as well.
Hello, everyone. My name is Maya Sussman, and I'm the Senior Director of Product at ParentPowered. And I joined this team after leading the development of all kinds of different educational products, from student data integrations at Clever to educational games at Osmo. And one of my absolute favorite things to do in my role at ParentPowered is to dig into all the incredible data we have on how families are engaging with the program and with their schools and their communities. And I love getting to share insights from this data with our partners and getting to build tools to help you all learn more about your family's needs and experiences. And I just want to let you know before we dive in that we will be recording this session, and we'll share out the recording and the slides with you afterwards. So I wanted to start off by telling you a little bit about how I ended up working at ParentPowered and what drew me to this company and to its products. So I first heard about ParentPowered while I was finishing my master's in education at Stanford. And in grad school, I had built an English coaching platform for adult immigrants. So our English learners received tips throughout the week delivered via text message, which were designed to support them in practicing English within their everyday moments. So if you know a bit about what we do at ParentPowered, this might sound familiar. And I actually didn't know about Ready4K when I started this project. Of course, I was serving a very different audience with different learning objectives, but my research led me to develop a very similar approach to what we follow here at ParentPowered. There was one big difference, though. I could tell you how many English learners I'd enrolled. I could tell you how many messages I had sent, but I had no way to know if the product I had developed was actually driving learning outcomes. So what drew me to ParentPowered when I learned about it was that there was such a strong evidence base showing the profound impact of their approach on families and children. And as someone who had been trying and really struggling to prove the efficacy of a similar intervention, I was so excited to see proof that the Ready4K approach actually worked. Now, of course, there's loads of research on the positive effects of family engagement for students, for families, for schools. We know students with families who are more engaged do better in school, both academically and behaviorally. And parents and caregivers feel great when they know that they're supporting their children's success. And a strong family engagement program also opens up systems of support for the whole family. And when students and families feel supported and engaged by their schools, school climate also improves. Teacher satisfaction and attendance increase. Kids are more regulated and ready, and relationships between teachers and families improve. So the Ready4K approach was developed with all of this existing research in mind, but the proof that this specific approach to family engagement actually works lives in the results of multiple rigorous academic studies. So the founder of ParentPowered, Dr. Benjamin York, and his colleagues from Stanford University, they first studied the Ready4K approach in a randomized control trial in partnership with the early education department of a large urban school district, which serves the city's lowest income preschool families. So the researchers randomly assigned half the parents to receive a curriculum via text message with fun facts, easy tips, and growth messages to support their child's learning by building on existing family routines. And then the other half of parents were in what's called a control group, where they just received one text every couple weeks with information about kindergarten enrollment requirements or required vaccinations. So the parents who received the curricular messages, they found them helpful, and they reported engaging in more literacy activities at home with their children. And teachers also reported increased involvement among parents who received the messages. And researchers found that children whose parents participated gained 2 to 3 months of literacy skills over the course of the school year. And what makes this really strong evidence is that parents were randomly assigned to either receive these program messages or not. So we're able to attribute this increase in engagement and in child outcomes to the intervention. If the researchers had instead, for example, asked which parents wanted to receive texts and then enrolled those parents in the program messages, we would have no way of knowing whether the outcomes we saw were a result of the messages they received, or if the parents who had chosen to participate were already going to be more engaged and their children were already going to show more accelerated learning. Now, we're committed to continuous evaluation and improvement. So we've continued partnering with top-tier academic researchers to learn more about how parent-powered programs improve outcomes for students, families, and schools. In one follow-up randomized control trial, researchers found that a version of Ready4K that was personalized to each child's development level was even more effective. Another study found that Ready4K texts were effective in engaging families in math skill building in addition to literacy. And more recent studies have explored things like the frequency of text messages. We also have current research studying the effects of our programs on older students as well, since we now support families up through 8th grade. And we're proud to say that with all of these studies, parent-powered programs meet the highest standards for evidence-based programs. But randomized controlled trials require a huge amount of work, and we absolutely don't expect you to be running these kinds of studies to evaluate your own family engagement work every year. So let's shift gears to talking about how you can use the data that's already available to you to learn about your family's strengths and needs, to measure their engagement, and to report on the impact of your family engagement work. So in this training, we are going to explore and answer some of the most frequently asked questions that our team receives about measuring and reporting family engagement impact. So first, how do I know if my families are engaging with the program? What do my families think about parent-powered programs? How can I maximize participation in my family engagement programs? And finally, how can parent-powered help me report on a grant? Now, before we dive in, I just want to acknowledge that we are all showing up with different levels of experience and different levels of comfort when it comes to gathering and analyzing data. At parent-powered, we think of data as a tool to answer questions and to learn about how we can improve our programs. And when I say data, I mean both quantitative data, so that's the numbers, the statistics, the outcomes we can measure, as well as qualitative data, the stories, the quotes, the feelings that help us understand the why behind the numbers we see. So as we walk through these questions, you'll see we've designed our tools to be super simple for you to use so that you don't need to have any experience with data and analysis in order to start gaining insights and measure your impact. But for those of you who are eager to dive in and you want to run your own analysis, there's always the option to dig deeper if you want. So with that, I will hand it back over to here to get us started with our first question.
Thanks, Maya. Let's dig in. So one of the most commonly questions we get is, how do I know that my family is engaging with the program? And we think that's a really important question. Ready4K and parent-powered programs are intentionally designed to be delivered via text messages because research shows that 98% of text messages are read, and this is significant, especially when compared to emails, which have a less than 25% open rate in the field of education. We know how easy it is to pick up your phone and read messages. However, the flip side of this simplicity is that data doesn't exist on who opens them compared to emails, which are more complex in design, and so there is more data available on them. Just like you, we were also curious about how often parents read our messages. We studied this hypothesis in Minnesota, where one group of parents received the Ready4K text messages, another received a mobile application, and a third group received parent modeling videos. We found that nearly all the parents read the Ready4K messages and found them easy to do and helpful. By comparison, only about half the parents downloaded that mobile app, of which 60% read the content, and only 55 to 60% found the activities easy to do and helpful. And 40% of the parents watched the parent modeling videos. So research about text messages being read is really strong, both from the field and our own studies. And while there is no direct way to tell you exactly how many messages were read by your specific set of families, we do have research that we can rely on. But that's not it. We have multiple other ways to answer your questions. First, we look at the surveys, and Maya is going to dig into survey data shortly. Each quarter, we conduct family engagement surveys, and we leverage them to ask families directly about whether they read our messages. One of the questions we very commonly ask parents is, how often do you read the messages? And 93% of families, and this is an all-time average, tell us that they read the Ready4K messages. Another metric we're interested in learning about is whether they find it easy to read and understand our messages, because those are key. If messages are long or lengthy or difficult to read, the readership and engagement will decline. To this end, we ensure that all our messages are written at a third grade reading level to ensure ease and access. So another question we ask families is, how easy are Ready4K messages to read and understand? And an astounding 98% of families tell us that they find the Ready4K messages easy and helpful. And this is yet another indicator of how many parents are reading our messages. And finally, taking it a step further, we ask families, how often do they do the activities that we send them? Because we know that ultimately we care about whether parents are engaged and reading the messages because we want them to engage with the activities prescribed by our program. So another question we ask is, how often do you do the Ready4K activities with your child? And not surprisingly, 88% of families tell us that they do the activities at least once per week. So you can use any or all of these survey results from your families found in your dashboard to examine how often your parents are engaging with the messages. Another way of gauging whether parents are engaged is by the message click rates. And for those of you whose families are receiving the trauma-informed program and those who are leveraging our custom message feature to send out your own messages, we have click data available for messages that contain web links. And although smaller, this can be used to understand how often parents are engaging with the Ready4K messages. So let's take a look at the dashboard to see where you can find this click data. So you'll navigate to the messages and surveys page, and and then we scroll down to the sent messages section. There it is. And let's find a message that was sent recently. So let's look at the one from November 10th. And that says, connect. As a parent, you support your child as they learn and grow. It's normal to have questions along the way. To learn more about things they might learn and do at each new age and phase, visit, and then we have a web link in there. And you can see on the right that we tell you, our system shows you how many families have received that message, how many clicks there were, and who clicked on this resource. And here, I just want to take a moment to point out that we should evaluate the click rates based on the content. For example, if we're sending a resource about food pantries, we really don't want 100% of the families clicking on that link because it would mean that all your families are in need of food assistance. So it's really important to contextualize this click data. And the good news is that click data is downloadable by each question separately or as an aggregate of all questions at the top. Yep. At the top of the sent messages section. There it is. And you can use this click data to get an understanding of how many parents are engaging with a given resource. And finally, we have another metric that we commonly use to understand whether parents are engaged with our program, and we call that metric the persistence data, the persistence rate. Persistence rate measures the number of families that are currently enrolled in the program as a proportion of all the families ever enrolled. Simply put, persistence refers to the act of continuing to stay enrolled in Ready4K. And we know that matters because families have the option to opt out, but they choose to stay enrolled. And that is an indicator of how helpful Ready4K is to them. And I say this because I get so many text messages from my favorite brands that I've subscribed to very optimistically, but I end up opting out because they drive me crazy. But there are some that I've stayed enrolled in because I do love the information they share. It is really easy to opt out of Ready4K messages. So if parents are staying enrolled in the program, it points to their engagement. Therefore, it's a great metric of parents reading the messages and being engaged with the program. And how do you calculate persistence? You simply take the number of active families found in your data and analytics page and divide it by the total enrollment. Summing it up, research shows that 98% of text messages are read, but you can use the persistence rates, the click data, and the survey data from your family data on the Ready4K dashboard to see how engaged your families are with our programs. I'm now going to hand it back to Maya to take us through our next commonly asked question.
Thank you, Here. So the next question we often get from partners is, what do my families think about parent-powered programs? There are plenty of interventions out there that have a positive impact, but are really not that fun to participate in. And no one wants family engagement to feel like going to the dentist. We want families to look forward to receiving and trying our tips, to feel good about themselves and their parenting when they do our activities. So how do we know if that's the case? Well, we ask them. Every quarter, we survey our families to learn about their experiences with our programs. So each parent or caregiver receives a text message with a multiple choice question. And all they have to do to respond is to reply to the message with a letter, A, B, C, or D. If they respond, we follow up with an open-ended question to give them the opportunity to share more details. And when we first started conducting these surveys, I have to say I was skeptical. How much would parents actually share in a text message? I really thought we would receive one-word answers. So I was shocked when I saw the replies coming in. Parents shared paragraphs of text with us, stories, anecdotes, and gratitude. Here are some examples of the quotes we've received from our surveys. One parent said, "I actually use these helpful methods and they're encouraging and super fun and easy to do with my son. Every day we do the activities and I enjoy learning right along with my child." So over the past 5 years, we have received over 250,000 survey responses, and the results are consistently positive. Across the board, 88% of parents report doing Ready4K activities with their children at least once per week. 92% report an increase in their confidence as a parent, and 93% said that Ready4K helped their child grow and learn. But I bet some of you are wondering, what about my family specifically? So let's go back to the dashboard and see how you can take a look at survey results for your families. So every quarter after our surveys go out, you'll see a new batch of results from your family show up in the data and analytics page. And if we scroll down, you'll see the survey section here. And in this section, you can see the month that families were surveyed in the upper right. You can select previous months to see different questions and responses that were received over time. And for each quarter, you'll see your family's aggregated responses to the questions we asked. Now, the questions we ask all correspond to those outcomes I described earlier when talking about our research. They're really designed to help you gain insights into whether parents are reading and enjoying the messages, whether the program is leading to increased family engagement, and ultimately how children are learning and growing. And our surveys are also designed to help us make decisions about how to improve our programs. For example, parents used to only be able to receive text for one child, and we got so many requests from parents who wanted to receive text for various different ages that we ended up adding support for multiple children. In the lower right of this section, you can see how many total responses we received this quarter across all 3 questions. And we get some questions about response rates and the validity of these surveys. So I just want to be clear that these are not academic surveys. In research studies like the randomized controlled trials I talked about on the Ready4K approach, In those cases, it's really important to have as many families as possible respond so we can compare the different treatment groups. And researchers will typically incentivize participation in order to get high response rates. Even so, though, they never get more than, they never get a full 100% participation rate. The surveys we conduct, though, they're intended to be dipsticks into your family's opinions and experiences. They let you check the pulse on how the program's going. So you can learn from families, you can get insight into what's going on, even with just a handful of responses. So you absolutely don't need, and you should not expect full participation in these surveys. We know from looking at the data that different families will respond to surveys at different points during the year. So you may only see, let's say, a quarter of your families respond to the September survey, but over the course of the year, perhaps over 50% of your families responded to at least one survey. And the open-ended responses down below here, those are a great example of how you can learn from even just a few families' replies. You can also download these survey results for each quarter as an image up at the top of this section, so you can easily pop that into a report or share it with your team. Now, we do this work of crafting the survey questions, collecting the responses, cleaning the data, aggregating the results. We do all that to make it easy for you to gain insights just at a glance. But if you're someone who really wants to dig deeper into the survey data on your own, you can always reach out to us and we'd be happy to share the raw data with you. Now, you can also use your Ready4K dashboard to send out your own survey questions if there are particular topics that you'd like families' input on beyond what we ask in our surveys. You can set those up on the messages and surveys page of your dashboard. And the filters at the top, they let you target your surveys to specific groups of families by zip code, grade level, or other data you included when you enrolled families. When you choose to send a survey question, you'll see boxes appear where you can type your question as well as each of the answer options. So let's just say we want to find out what topics families are interested in learning about at an upcoming workshop. We could ask something like, which topic would you be most excited to learn about at this month's Family Fun Hour? And then our answer options might be, let's say, literacy, math, science, or play. So we just type those in. And you can include translations for each language that your families speak. Then you can choose whether you want to send your survey out right now or schedule it for later. And in either case, once it goes out, you'll see the results show up in real time below. So this will hop us down to a survey we sent in the past. And you can see those results over on the right coming in. We've had partners use this feature to learn things like what kinds of resources families needed most, or to get families' input and opinions on things like how to spend their remaining Title I funds at the end of the year. So whether you're using our platform to send surveys or if you're distributing them to families in some other way, there are a few tips we wanted to share for getting the most out of your family surveys. So first of all, you want to make sure that you know the what, the why, and the how of your survey. So often school leaders will issue surveys because they need to know something, but you only need the data that's actually going to help you make the decision in front of you. So before you ask parents to spend time on your survey, make sure you and your team know, what do you need to know? Are you making decisions about scheduling, about technology? What information is going to help you make that decision? And then why do you want to know it? What is the decision you're going to make based on this information? And if there's no actionable outcome from the information, maybe don't ask it. Finally, how are you going to use it? And that's different than why. Make sure you take the time to think about how this information is actually going to impact your decision. We've all been asked questions that seemed more like a box checking exercise. So if family input won't change your decision, or if you don't know how the input can be used, it's probably better not to ask the question. How do you make sure that you keep your families engaged? Well, by making your surveys and input requests low lift and high reward. So that means keep it short. The longer and more frequent your surveys are, the more people grow weary of them. If you create an expectation that the surveys you share are always going to be easy to fill out, then families are more likely to keep responding over time. And there's a few ways to do this. First, as a general principle for a family input survey, try to keep it to no more than 5 questions. And if you can get what you really need from 2 or 3, even better. Second, take the survey yourself and time it. People tend to stop paying attention to surveys as they progress. So if it takes longer than about 5 minutes to answer your feedback surveys, consider cutting them down. And a great way to do this is by taking a hard look at similar questions and asking yourself, what do I really need to know? And what's the best way to ask that question? With a little reflection, you can often pare down your questions to the few highest value questions that you really need answered. Now, the question type or the variable you choose should reflect how you're going to use the information. So don't choose the kind of question you ask until you know what kind of information you need from the question. Here's a really simple example that you might use. Let's say you're planning a pizza party. So a multiple choice or binary question is for when you're trying to get a vote or a ranking. So for example, in this case, if you're choosing how much of each type of pizza to order, you might give a set of choices and see which ones rank highest. A Likert scale is for when you're trying to get a sense of preference or compare options. So this can be helpful if you want the analysis to help you figure out how strongly your families feel about something. So for example, maybe you want to know how likely is it that people will actually show up so you don't over order pizza. If everyone is definitely going to be there, we'll order more pizza. If lots of people are only a maybe, then you can dial back that order. Continuous scales, those are for when you're trying to understand a distribution. So this can be helpful if you want the analysis to give you answers like 80% of attendees anticipate eating 3 slices of pizza or fewer. And finally, open response questions. Those are for when you're trying to capture stories or quotes. So this might help you capture ideas for planning the events at your pizza party. For example, what kinds of activities would you like to see at the party? Now, taking a survey, even a super short one, is a chore, and even your most engaged families are going to grow weary of taking surveys. So one way to combat that is to ensure that you're transparent, not only in your intent to use the data, but when the data has informed your decision making. So make sure that people know that you've listened to them and that their involvement has guided your actions. When you announce a program update, you might reference the family data. Just hearing something like, we've decided to focus this month's Family Fun Hour on science based on the feedback from the last family survey will help families feel like they're an important part of the process. Again, it's about creating that positive feedback loop. So you ask for input, you use the input, and families see how their input made a difference. And then they're more likely to provide input the next time. So finally, back to our conversation about response rates, here are some tips for increasing participation with your family surveys. And it's important to remember that a lack of participation isn't necessarily a reflection of disinterest. It could be a lack of time, could be barriers like language or literacy, or it could be a belief that their input isn't going to make a difference. So a few ways to improve your response rates are to translate your survey. So if you have other commonly spoken languages you serve, make sure your questions are in those languages too. And this has the added benefit of signaling to those families that speak other languages that you want their feedback too. Next, make sure to level your text, both in the survey and the request for feedback. Our curricular messages, for example, they're all written at a 3rd grade reading level. And make sure you're enlisting your staff. Have educators share the requests for input in their conversations with families. And of course, you never want them to imply that services are any way linked to participating in surveys, but these interactions with families are great opportunities to build trust around surveys and share how communication in your organization is a two-way street. And finally, reach out to community groups for assistance. If there are organizations that interact with your families, have the trust of your families, that can be a really great way to improve response rates. I wish I could offer a silver bullet to ensure full participation, but the reality is that full representation on any single survey, let alone all of them, is pretty impossible. And your best strategy is to have a plan for inclusion and to be vigilant. So if you can, evaluate your responses through the use of demographic questions, so you can track the success and make any necessary changes. And as I mentioned earlier, you definitely do not need full participation in order to learn from your family surveys. So we covered a lot in this section. I shared how we approach getting feedback from families and the results of our longitudinal studies. We went over how to view and understand your family survey results, and we discussed some strategies for sending your own surveys, whether that's through the Ready4K dashboard or another survey tool you may use. So another question we often get from partners is how to maximize participation in their family engagement programs. We're all here because we know family engagement is a fundamental component of student success and school improvement. But we also know there are a lot of barriers that can prevent families from participating in the programs and events we plan. Some types of high quality programs that schools offer for parents are hard for families to access. For example, family workshops can be really engaging, but they tend to attract families who have the extra time and mobility to attend an in-person event. And research shows that dropout rates in school-based programs like these can be as high as 50%. It's often the parents who could benefit the most from support who drop out. So this is why we designed our parent-powered family workshops to include a variety of different ways for families to participate, either in person or virtually. In other cases, signing up for programs presents a barrier to access for families. So there was an interesting recent study out of Columbia and Harvard where researchers invited parents to sign up for a text messaging program by either responding to a text or enrolling online. Less than 10% of the parents who were invited to the program actually signed up. And not surprisingly, the parents who chose to enroll tended to have higher achieving children, tended to already be more engaged with their kids' education. On the other hand, a different group of parents was automatically signed up for the program, and 96% of them remained enrolled, representing a much more diverse set of families and students. So this study offers one insight into how to maximize participation, make it really easy. And there's a few other strategies we use when working with partners around the country to maximize their family's participation in our programs. And I want to say these tips are relevant for any kind of family engagement program you're rolling out, whether that's a digital program like ours or an in-person event like a family workshop. So the first tip is to make sure that your families know when a new program is coming their way. No one should be surprised by their first Ready4K message. The top reason that families tell us they opt out of our program is that they don't remember signing up to receive the messages. And the majority of opt-outs happen in the first month or so after families are enrolled. So you can address both of these concerns by making sure all families know about the program before it launches. In your dashboard, you can find flyers in multiple languages that you can share with your families to let them know about the program. You can send these over email or text. You can print them out and send them home, hang them around your school in places that families will see them, send them on social media. We've also had partners use automated phone calls to let families know about the program or presentations at family events like back to school night. If you need any additional resources to get the word out to your families, just let us know and we're always happy to help you out. So when it comes to telling your families about a new program or opportunity, it's important to align the way you describe it to what you know they care about. So first and foremost, we know families want their children to thrive. So you might position Ready4K as a tool for helping them support their child's success. And you can draw on any specific information you have from your family. So this is a great opportunity to let them know you've listened to their feedback, like we discussed earlier with surveys. So for example, you might say, in last year's survey, families shared that they wanted to know more about what their children are learning at school. Ready4K will give you insight into the skills your child is building in each grade level and how you can support those at home. So this lets families know that you're listening to them, and it shows them that this new resource is going to help them with something that they care a lot about. Now, parents have a lot going on, so repetition is your friend here. Make sure to give them multiple different opportunities to learn about new programs. Not just multiple channels like I mentioned earlier, but also multiple times throughout the year. Back to school is a super busy time of year for everyone. So why not follow up a couple months later when things have settled down a bit to remind them about this great resource that's available? And if your school or district is focused, let's say, on literacy for a particular month, you could include a note about how Ready4K fits in and maybe even include one of the family resources from our dashboard. And as you remind families about Ready4K throughout the year, you can also remind them how to opt back in if they want to re-enroll. And finally, I want to encourage you to dig into your data and be on the lookout for any trends in who is participating in your family engagement activities. Are your Spanish speakers participating at higher rates? Are you struggling to engage your fourth grade families? Look for opportunities to re-engage specific groups, aligning with what you know matters most to them. Now, in general, we see very high persistence rates amongst families enrolled in our programs. While they vary by organization, most of our partners see at least 80% of their families remain enrolled in the program. So we don't expect 100% of families to remain enrolled, but the persistence rates we see are much higher than other family engagement programs like the ones I mentioned earlier. And that's really saying something because we also want to make sure that every family knows how to opt out of the program if they don't want to participate. So when families are enrolled, the very first message they receive from us is our welcome message that lets them know what to expect, how to make changes to their program, and how to opt out if they don't want to receive messages. If they reply stop, we immediately opt them out of all future messages and we send them a confirmation to let them know they've been opted out. In that confirmation, we also let them know they can opt back in by just texting start at any point in the future. And we include a survey so we can better understand why families are leaving the program. So if you're curious to know more about opt-outs for your family specifically, there are a couple ways to dig into this data in your dashboard. So over on the data and analytics page at the very top, you'll see your enrollment over time. And if you hover over any point in this graph here, you can see your total enrollments at that point in time, as well as your enrollments broken down by their status. So you can see here in purple the number of families who have opted out of the program at that point in time. And if you'd like to understand which of your families are opting out, you can find all those details in your data download. So you just click download data in the upper right, and you'll get a spreadsheet with all of your current enrollment data. So this first sheet in your spreadsheet shows all of your active enrollments. So if you're interested in learning more about families who've opted out, you just hop over to the opt-out sheet at the bottom. And here you'll see a full list of families who've opted out of the program. For each one, you can see the date they were enrolled, as well as the date they opted out. And you can see how many days they participated in the program before opting out. And this is important because families can opt out at any point in the program. If they opt out on day one, then you probably don't want to count them as having participated. But if they opt out after 6 months of messages, that's a significant amount of content they received. And we don't want to ignore the fact that they were probably reading and acting on those messages for months before choosing to leave. So you can see the same information for families whose phone numbers have stopped working, and also for those who have aged out of the program in the different tabs down below. You can also turn on filters and filter this data by language, by age, or zip code if you're interested in exploring patterns and opt-outs across your different groups of families. So to recap this section, we talked about how hard it can be to get families to participate in programs, especially in-person events, programs that they have to sign up for. We discussed some tips for encouraging participation in parent-powered programs, as well as your other family engagement programs. And we dove into how to find and interpret your Ready4K opt-out data. So I will turn it back to here to talk about our last question today.
All right, and now finally, the request that we receive most often throughout the year on how Ready4K can help you report on a grant. Our programs are aligned with the Head Start Early Learning Outcome Framework and the learning standards in all 50 states. In addition, we align to the Title I and III of the Every Student Succeeds Act, ESSA. This means that our program qualifies as part of any school or district's required written parent and family engagement policy, as well as for the 1% of the Title I funds that are reserved for parent and family engagement. We also align with ESSA's Title IV Part B, 21st Century Community Learning Centers, and Title V Part B, Rural Education. So not surprisingly, we hear from our partners who receive grants about how we can provide them with the data to support their reporting needs. Last month, I received a request from one of our first 5 partners in California who were gathering data for a county map tool, in which they had to provide data on families that were enrolled in Ready4K. They wanted to understand who's enrolled in Ready4K from their county and any other demographic data for those enrolled and for those that dropped off. To help them get the data I needed, I followed this 4-step approach, and this is a model that you could follow no matter what program you're reporting on. First, I prepared the list of metrics that would help them answer their questions. Second, I gathered the data. Third, I conducted some basic analysis to get another layer of information. And then finally, I communicated the findings in a report. So let's start. In the first step, before you start gathering any data for reports, I encourage you to have your questions ready and make a list of the data that you need to answer your questions. In this case, the partner wanted to know how many families were enrolled between June of last year and October this year, any demographic information, any feedback on, and any opt-out data. So I made a list. Active families between June 1 to October 1, opted out families, language data, grade levels, and survey data. And that was step 1. Step 2 is to gather your data. So in this step, it's critical to know where all your data lives. Some data could be within your student information systems, some could live in your survey files, and some could be in spreadsheets that live in your computers. It's also possible that of the data that you have available, some can be readily used and some needs to be analyzed. As far as Ready4K goes, all your data lives in the dashboard, the majority of which is in the data and analytics page. So as you get started, I do recommend having either an Excel spreadsheet or a piece of paper at hand, whatever you're most comfortable with, to jot your data as you discover it. So I pulled up an Excel sheet and I started looking for my data. So let's go to the dashboard and navigate to the data and analytics page to pull the data. So in this, so I come here and I start scanning over what's available. So at the top, you have some high-level enrollment metrics that show enrollments, messages delivered. As you scroll down, you can also see a breakdown of your families by languages. You can see who have non-working numbers, any zip code and custom data breakdowns. And then as you keep scrolling, you'll see that that's where your survey data lives. And then as you keep scrolling even further, you'll see your data broken down by ages, broken down by languages at the bottom. Yeah, and then also an opt-out graph. So it's always helpful for me to do a quick scan of the data that is available because it can spark ideas for reporting. Since I was interested in a particular date range, I scrolled to the performance section. Yep. And I set my date range over here. So you'll see there's date filters. So I set the date as June 2021 to October 1, 2022. And once I picked my dates, I saw that there were 74 new enrollments in this time period and over 17,588 messages that were delivered in this time period as well. So I just took notes of this on my Excel doc, and then next wanted to go to my opt-out data. And at the bottom, you will see, sorry, if you could go to the graph. Yeah. So there is a graphical representation of the opt-outs here, and this can be helpful to see, at a quick glance what the opt-outs are looking like. But, like Maya shared, if you do need more details on those opt-outs, you are going to have to download all your raw data and dig into the opt-outs in there. So this brings me to the third stage, where I need to do some analysis to get more information. And so that's our third step, analyze. As we saw, there's a lot of valuable data available in the dashboard. However, sometimes we do need to do some extra analysis, however simple, to get an added layer of information. And we could do that by combining 2 or more sources of data, or by simply applying filters on existing data so that we can discover any key pieces of insights that we may have been missing. For example, this partner wanted to know how many opted out families spoke Spanish. So I go to the data dashboard, I downloaded my raw data, and I apply filter. And so in the opt-out sheet, if you apply filters, yep, and then we select the language as Spanish. Yep. You'll see that there was one Spanish-speaking family that had opted out. And so, that tells us, a little bit about those demographics that this partner had requested that they needed to report on their grant. Another way to generate insights is by matching 2 different data sets. For example, you might want to match your student information data with what's available in our dashboard. And to make that easy, we have introduced a student ID column so that you can match all the data easily. And this can be particularly helpful if you are required to report on demographics that we don't collect in Ready4K. And then once I had all my data that I needed, I created a report to communicate my findings. Data communication is really important, especially as you could be reporting different pieces of information to many different audiences. You want to ensure that the data is easy to understand for not just anybody comfortable with data, but really for any and all levels of expertise. And one way to do that is by providing definitions or adding qualitative data to your numbers. For example, instead of sharing that we sent 500 text messages, I would share that 500 messages with literacy and math tips went out. When reporting, it's also important to contextualize the information. For example, you could provide some background information or patterns or trends that help understand the data better. An example would be, if the majority of drop-offs are among Spanish-speaking families, it could be because the majority of enrolled families speak Spanish. So it's important to provide that context to be able to interpret the data correctly. And finally, the last tip I'd like to share is that, this is something that's really worked for me, is that I try to visualize data whenever possible. So I'll use charts where I can or use graphs, because sometimes it's just easier to see data in terms of visuals. And to make this easy for you, we have ensured that you can download your entire Ready4K dashboard view as a PDF report, and you can even download your survey data as images if needed. And finally, I wanted to share, a few sources of data that we provide to you over the course of the year, which you can also use to report on your grants. Every day, we update the data dashboard so you can see enrollment and engagement data and click data updated in real time. Each month, we send a data roundup email directly to your emails with a monthly summary of enrollments and any new survey results. Each quarter, we update the dashboard with new survey results from your families. And lastly, each year, at the end of the school year, we provide you with an end-of-year impact report highlighting enrollment and engagement metrics, as well as any family feedback we've collected from your families throughout the year. And these reports live in the resources tab. And so I strongly encourage you all to get acquainted with the multiple sources of information so reporting becomes even easier. All right, so let's do a quick recap. Today, we have covered many of our partners' frequently asked questions. We covered ways in which you can measure how engaged your families are with Ready4K and ParentPowered programs, where to find survey data, how to maximize participation in any family engagement program, and how to leverage your Ready4K dashboard and the 4-step approach to report on your grants. So just wanted to thank you all for being here. We do have an exciting offer to share with you before we move on to our Q&A section. Grant funding is now available both for new partners as well as existing partners who are looking to expand the grades that they serve. And these grants can be applied to middle school students and families as well. So to do so, feel free to visit our website. It's bit.ly/equity-grant. Or you can email us on info@ready4k.com to find more. All right, and now we can move on to any remaining questions that you have in our few minutes left together. Thank you. All right, so I see we have a few questions, and I encourage you all to put your questions in the chat or the Q&A box, and we'll answer them right now. So the first question we have is there any way to identify specific families not having a positive experience with the platform?
That's a great question. And I think that is an area where we would encourage you to dig deeper into the survey results. So like I shared, the dashboard sort of gives you that snapshot view, but if you want to dig in sort of family by family and understand their experience, we are always happy to share the raw survey data with you because you know your family's best and you might have some more context on what's going on behind the survey results we're receiving. So definitely reach out. We're happy to share that with you so you can dig in.
Thanks, Maya. There's a couple of people asking about the slides. We are going to share the recording with you after the webinar. So just wait for the email that we'll send with the recording. And then there's another question. We can ask questions to our participants for a survey.
Yeah, so asking your own questions in a survey, I think that's what this question is about. Yes, so we send our surveys out 4 times a year, and we share those results with you. But at any point, you can send your own survey out. So that could be a survey about the parent-powered programs, if there's other questions you want to ask about families' experiences, or it could be a survey about anything else. You know, we have partners using that to try to figure out which day of the week is going to be best for a family event, or to get families' input on how they would like to spend remaining funds that year, what would be most helpful for them. Here, you probably have more examples of the types of things folks have asked, but really anything.
Yeah, like I can recall there was a Head Start partner of ours trying to understand the best day to meet with families. And so they sent out a simple survey asking what day of the week works best to meet. And they got really good parent feedback, and they were able to hold parent-teacher conferences on that specific day. All right. The next questions are in the chat box, and we have one that is, when we update the enrollments, are the previous enrollments that are now not currently on the Excel file removed?
That's a great question. So every time you enroll new families by importing a spreadsheet, you have the option whether you want to add those to your existing families or whether you want to sort of wipe the slate clean and just enroll the new ones and get rid of everyone else. So you have that option when you upload the file. There'll be a little box that pops up that lets you choose, and it's really up to you depending on how you're enrolling families. Whether you want to start from scratch each time or whether you want to sort of build on your enrollments with each additional upload.
All right. Next question is, where can we continue to find the end of year impact report?
Yes, those live in your Ready4K dashboard in the section called resources. That's where you'll find the parent flyers we shared, some dashboard guides with tips and tricks for navigating some of the stuff we talked about today. Thank you. And this resources page, this demo account we're using actually doesn't have an impact report in it. So sorry, we can't show that, but it should be right at the top in yours. And if you have any trouble finding that, just reach out and we can send it your way too.
Thanks, Maya. Another question is this for only schools or can parents sign up?
I feel like I've been answering a lot of questions. Do you want to take this one here?
Sure. So thanks for asking that question. We work with schools, community-based organizations, Head Starts, childcare centers. So we work with many different kinds of organizations. And depending on the size of the organization, we create an enrollment strategy for them. So larger organizations like Head Starts and schools upload their families themselves. But when we work with smaller organizations like daycares or childcare providers, they could ask their parents to sign up for the program. So it really depends on the size of your organization and how you want your parents to be signing up. Okay. The next question is, can we send different questions to different families? Example, which day works best to meet might be something only one school wants to ask.
Yes, absolutely. So when you send out a survey, there are filters at the top of that page. Maybe we can pull up the demo account again so I can show that. So when you've enrolled families, you'll include information about the child's grade level, their language, all of that when you upload their data. And so then over on the messages and surveys page, you'll see filters that correspond to those fields. So zip code, age or grade level, and that custom value is where lots of programs will include school names. So you could choose which schools should get this, which schools shouldn't, and you could send different schools different surveys. Or if you send one to everyone, you could also sort of slice and dice your responses based on which school they were from.
Awesome. And we have another follow-up question, which is, if families have multiple children, do they get multiple texts?
Do you want to take that one here?
Sure. So we have our 3 text messages a week are also based on research on the frequency and dosage. And so if we have one parent enrolled, they get those 3 text messages Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But let's say that this parent had multiple children, they would still get a maximum of 3 messages. And how we do that is we combine the fact, tip, and growth in one message for the youngest child, send that on Monday. Combine the fact, tip, and growth for the second child, send that on Wednesday, and then combine the fact, tip, and growth for the third child and send that on Friday. And at the start of each message, we tell the parents who this is coming for. So that way they'll still get a maximum of 3 text messages per week, but we have the ability to enroll up to 3 children per phone number.
And I also see a comment, thank you for that, Kate, for a family with twins in the same class, I only import 1 record. So our system is smart enough to identify when a parent would be getting the same text twice, and we won't send that. So in the case of twins, we'll just send them, you know, the first grade text once, so they won't get duplicates.
Yeah, and the good news is that if you were to upload twins twice, because the date of birth and the phone number for the family will be exactly the same, that will count as 1 student. So the system will only send 1 message. Right. And then there's another question about the grant. I got approved for a grant. What's the next step? So if you've been approved for a grant that is external to Ready4K, you can reach out to info@ready4k.com, and somebody from our sales team will get in touch with you and guide you through the next steps. Or if you've been approved for the Ready4K grant, the process will still be the same. Our sales team will be in touch with you and help you out and get onboarded. So we can put our info email in the chat box so you know where to reach out to us at. Okay, we have a question. If your daycare doesn't have this parent-powered program, what are the steps to enroll? Thanks for asking that question. Currently, we are only making the program available if your organization has purchased the Ready4K program. Of course, if you are part of a school district that's offering the program, so if you are in the state of Illinois, Wisconsin, or Tennessee, or if you're in the city of New York, then we can, help you find options. But otherwise, you are going to have to purchase the program to have your families participate.
And if they're interested in purchasing, what would next steps be?
Yeah, and if you are interested, once again, feel free to reach out to us on info@ready4k.com. And we do have grants available, so feel free to apply for our grant. It's very easy. All right, there is another question. Do the participants of this presentation, will they receive full information?
Yes, we will follow up with the, I think you're referring to the recording. We'll follow up with the full recording and a certificate of attendance as well. So you can watch it again, you can share it. Yeah, if you have any follow-up questions, we're always happy to answer those as well. I also see a question in there about getting an error on the dashboard. We will look into that right after this presentation and get back to you on that. Sorry that you're seeing an error. That's no good. Want to make sure that's working for you.
All right.
Any other questions? I'm curious if there's any other data or reporting needs that you all have come across for those of you who are Ready4K partners, parent-powered partners already. Is there anything else that you find yourself wanting or needing to report on that we could answer for you? Well, if we've answered all your questions, we won't hold you any longer. You know how to find us, info@ready4k.com if you think of anything else, and we'll follow up with this recording so you all have it. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure to talk to you all, and looking forward to continuing working with you.
Thanks, everyone.